Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. All right, here we go, man. We're on, we're recording, and I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. It was all I could do to hit record because we've been chatting, this guest and I, for the last few minutes about fun things that you'll never hear because they weren't recorded, and they're hilarious. So let me introduce you to him. He is let's talk about one of the key factors in marketing. One of the key factors in marketing is words, is writing, is storytelling, and that's one of the many things that this person does, but really it's one of their specialties, the idea of the written word. And he comes at it as a creative writer, a blogger, an editor, a storyteller, a marketing leader. So currently a strategic marketing consultant and vice president at Market Tree. George Jacob, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I know you're drinking mushroom coffee. Can you just tell me how it is?
I'm trying it out. It's questionable. It's questionable. So it comes in pouches. It's kind of ground up. It's like a tea bag. You kind of take it and then you pour it out. But it's very I don't know. I haven't committed to it in terms of, like, they say that you should have like one a day. So it's like you do that and that should cover you for all morning. And I'm like, I can't.
Does it have caffeine? Is it like?
It does. Yeah.
So it is
plus
caffeinated.
Some sort of ground up mushrooms. This one is called cordyceps. So CORDYCEPS, which may help. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just know that it's caffeine and it's slightly faster than brewing a normal cup of coffee. So I just went with that prior to jumping on. Yeah.
And does it taste like coffee, or does it taste like you're eating mushroom soup?
Somewhere in the middle, I think. So it tastes more like coffee. It's like but it's got that instant coffee sort of processed taste.
Is that cordyceps? Is that the mushroom? Or is that the brand?
That's the mushroom. The brand is called Four Sigmatic or something like that.
This is clearly not an advertisement for that, because we're still the ballots are still out.
I'm an opportunist, so it was on sale. That's why I bought it. Yeah.
Right. And so it's funny because I'm drinking Folgers instant coffee. Which
okay. So yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that, I think. Yeah. I think we're in the same space.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it really tastes like coffee, but it's black and I think it has caffeine in it. So I don't think either of us are going to be appealing to the coffee curators out there with their French press.
No. Right. Well, just pouring sludge into our systems and then hoping we get some caffeine out of it, I think. Right.
Yeah. Well, we were saying the show will really take off in you've already started. So you're there. Yeah. I will catch up. It'll be the best show ever in 10 minutes, people. Just give us 10 minutes. And then it's going to crash after that. And then
I'll come down. I'll crash. And then at that point, your caffeine should kick in. And then
I'll carry the show at that point. Yeah. I'll put you on my back and I'll just carry this whole thing to the finish line.
This is good.
Well, hey, man, this is our marketing leadership series, as well as apparently a health show.
Yeah.
Healthy drinking habits in the morning. Like what I want to do is start the show the way we start every show. After we've done talking about beverages, which is by passing you this. It's heavy, but I ran today. So here you go. All right. This is Thor's hammer. Go ahead. Take that. You got it?
I got it.
All right.
Sort of.
One-handed.
But kind of.
Got a pro here.
Captain America.
So, take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception that just drives you crazy. You want to set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, I want to say right now that your projections are probably garbage. So you should probably not worry about hitting them as much as understanding why you're not hitting them or what you can do to hit them, So it's I think right now hitting your projected goal is less important than understanding why you did or didn't.
Yeah. Things are so crazy right now.
Yeah.
It's a different world, and I think we try to get some safety with our plans that we made a year ago when this wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's the danger in that if we just keep trudging along in the same plan?
Well, it's kind of funny because I think that, when I'm looking back on forecasts and I'm looking back on metrics and things that we're doing with clients, it's all kind of based on some sort of linear progression or like some sort of fair weather sort of constant, right? Like it's sort of like when you think about any sort of business and how it's going to grow over time, you don't predict something like a pandemic somewhere in there.
Right. It's going to kill like 50% of your sales or more.
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So right now I've kind of been treating it, and I think like that like the clients that are sort of the most successful at it are the ones that are sort of like able to understand that, okay, this is a different scenario. What are the tools we're going to take to move and take advantage of the things that we can? What's like 75% of the way there? Let's aim there and let's move in that direction and go from there. I think
Yeah.
it's been very much like a toolkit kind of setup. Like it's, I don't know if you're a homeowner or
Yeah.
like, or yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm
Studio
sorry to
B
hear that.
right now, this is the coronavirus bunker basement.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm a homeowner too. And it's, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
essentially, I would equate it to like, that first thing where we walk around the house and you have your like Leatherman and like that's what you need, and then you kind of try to do everything you can do to not go grab the other tools. Like I think we're in that space. Like what do you need to kind of operate right now versus like thinking about it in terms of like getting the entire toolbox, right?
Oh, right. Like, there's 1,000 things I need to fix right now, but just
Yeah,
make sure your Wi-Fi is good. And make
exactly.
sure your
Just start.
electricity works. You've
Right.
got running water. Your bathrooms function. Everything else
Exactly.
after that is like
Toolkits.
bonus.
Yeah,
And
exactly right.
then, but I guess plan on it for the future still,
Right.
but don't necessarily think like you need to
Yeah,
accomplish.
I think particularly in like a mature marketing setup, right? So if you have like you've been doing your outreach for years and you kind of have like a team of people and you have technologies and pay-per-click out there and email strategies and contact database, blah, 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 that whole thing, you built out that entire setup.
Right.
It's almost paralyzing to think like, how are we going to take that entire thing and move it over here, right? Versus like
Right.
what can we just get out into the water here and get some metrics against it and then see whether or not that's working and move forward there.
I like that. I like that. And so, and you're working with different companies, different clients to
Mm-hmm.
help them with that higher level strategy in terms of what are we looking at, where are we going.
Yeah.
Um, are there some sort of minimums that you should keep going across the board? What kind of things do you see?
You mean like
Minimum activities or
yeah.
minimum things like don't. What is the bathroom water and the
Hmm.
electricity and the Wi-Fi for a house? What is that in the marketing world? What do you make
I
sure?
think it's going to be dependent. Like so
Okay.
we've been over the course of the last month or two or however long it's been. I'm losing track, right? I sort of have my little hashes on the wall. I think I'm
Yeah.
it's it
You're using
looks a
stone, like stone on
yeah,
stone. Like,
exactly. It's like
yeah.
the Count of Monte Cristo
I was
kind of
just
thing,
thinking that
right?
same movie.
So
Yeah.
so it's that sort of setup. I mean, but we kind of like over the course, whenever that started, we started to do like SWOT, some sort of
Yeah.
structure to say, okay, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, like what do we have to leverage here? So sort of like, and it would be mainly the combination of strengths and opportunities. Like how are we going to apply our strengths to the things that we see as opportunities?
That's a really good point. Just even go back and say, have you done I mean, for everyone listening, even
Yeah.
myself, have I done a SWOT analysis of this particular situation? Took a step back just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
We got bread, we got toilet paper. Now, okay, cool. Let's just think
Yeah.
for a second because I think
Boom.
we're in go, go, go mode so much.
Right. You say you're like toilet paper, bread, toilet paper sandwiches. There's our opportunity, right?
There it
Like,
is. Or,
so
yeah.
other way around, maybe toilet paper on the outside.
I
I don't
don't know
know.
what
Let's
toilet paper
innovate.
tastes like. I'm not sure it would be very nutritious. But
It's
yeah,
fibrous.
you got
Yeah.
you're right. It is fibrous.
Mhm.
If you got the good kind, it's fibrous though, right? If you went cheap,
Right.
it's nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah,
Um.
but I think
Yeah.
it's that thing. So it's more in those sort of setups, right? You need like an exercise. It's like a construct
Mm,
in order to operate. So you can kind of just like mentally sort of come through it and say, okay,
yeah.
what do we have to work with? And you almost ignore at this point in time too, and weaknesses and threats. Like those are the things that just to be aware of, but you're kind of concentrating mainly on application of strengths against opportunities, particularly in a time where you're really trying to make a shift or you're really trying to like operate in such a strange time. Like what
Mm,
we've sort of seen is a lot of companies that like almost shuffle their deck in terms of like what our targets are, what we're going to like
okay.
sort of wait to invest in, what we're kind of thinking of moving out, like what markets are we really after, like those sorts of things where you sort of think when you're thinking about it in this like constant space over time, you might say that, like that's an opportunity for, Q4 of next year or something like
Yeah.
that, where now it's sort of like, well, let's get out there now because that's going to be likely more of it like impactful on our business in the near term. And we should
Yeah.
just shift it. Yeah.
It's a good point to focus in on the strengths and opportunities but my question to you is like why? Because I think a lot of us are focusing on the opposite. We're focusing on like, oh dear God, we have weaknesses and we have threats everywhere.
Right. Well, the threats you can't really do much about. So like
Okay.
that's one of those things that you kind of pay attention to, and potentially even like ignore, just because, what are you, unless you want to like sit in the corner and cry for a while. I mean, and which is fine if you need that,
I
right?
definitely did that the first or 2 weeks in quarantine.
Right.
I've recovered since, but yeah.
Right. So then you got to shake it off, and then you got to like move in some direction, right?
Right.
So that's the strengths and sort of opportunities thing, right? So what am I going to do now that all those tears are out and I'm ready to go?
Yeah, it's like that abundance mindset, right? Looking at
Yeah.
it as like, well, yeah, you could just cower in fear, or what kind of opportunities are there for your business?
Yeah.
And everyone's got strengths, just like we've got weaknesses and
Yeah.
we've threats. We've got strengths, we've got opportunities. What are they for you, for your
Hmm.
company, for your business, for your marketing team? And if
Yeah.
you're just an individual marketer, what are the different things that you could do as a marketer to help your company? What are your strengths that we could leverage right now?
Hmm.
It's a great, I think it's important to sort of twist that around, you know?
Yeah, I think it's that thing too. We've been saying it a lot too, in terms of like if you think about like a product or a service or features and benefits and things like that, right? Like
Yeah.
in a new time, in a time like this, there is a sort of like reshuffling of like maybe those benefits that may have been at the bottom of the list in fair weather
Yeah.
times now need to come up to the top of the list. And it's just sort of a like in reassessing all those things and kind of reordering all the strengths and against the opportunities, that kind of gives you enough of a framework to be able to move forward. Okay, this is our podium, this is our messaging, this is how we're going to
Yeah.
position in this time. Let's go out there and try to get some, real estate. Let's kind of build from there.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's not even like you're profiteering on it, unless you're sending one of those ridiculous emails about COVID,
Right.
followed shortly there by your pricing list, which I hate.
Right.
As long as
Yes.
you're not doing that, it's okay to see opportunity during this time.
I
As
think
long as
that's right.
you're not, sticking people for high prices on face masks or something
Right.
super dark like that. If you're just
Mhm.
literally trying to help out your customers even more so now, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with
Yeah, it's that thing too. I think you've heard it a lot over time if you've been in the marketing function, where you sort of have that like being authentically helpful message, right?
that.
Like, how can I
Yeah.
be helpful? Um, there is that little thing that happens, like there's that gray area between marketing and sales where you're being authentically helpful in a way that drives the sale. Like, I think in this time frame, there's like you're just being authentically helpful in the ways that that you can be helpful. It's strength. That's the strengths part, right? Like, what do we do best, and how does that apply to what we're seeing out there? And you're just kind of being helpful in that way. I mean, you
You,
have people around, you have skill sets, you have services, et cetera, that can help people right now. So it's just about getting in front of those people.
Yeah, it's a great point. Being authentically helpful and how you can kind of smell when it isn't. And I just pulled this up on my LinkedIn. I got a message on Saturday from someone who
Hmm.
wanted to connect. And, I want to be open and connecting with people, but then you get so many of those spammers.
Yeah.
So this guy, you know, he's a trainer and whatnot and author. And so, hey, what are you doing? Hey, Casey, what are you doing to prepare for the breakout? Okay. Didn't respond right away
Yeah.
but at least it's not like a, thanks for connecting to me. Here's my 9 paragraphs. So,
Sure.
okay. But then today I got a message saying, I've got an idea to help you get your sales team prepared for the breakout.
Mhm.
I'm just like, it's kind of borderline. There was a one that happened prior to him. I just
Yeah.
straight up blocked him because it was
Mhm.
like blah, 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 blah. And it didn't really, this is like borderline, but I get the sense that maybe it's, he's not, it's just like a program or something,
Yeah. It's kind of feels a little bit more, it's very much like traveling salesman kind of thing, right? It's like
Totally. And
at
wouldn't you
this
know, this
point where
person's
we're
a sales trainer. So
exactly.
you
You're in the
call
bunker. Yeah, it's essentially
it.
like somebody like ringing your doorbell and you're like, what do you know?
selling
Yes,
encyclopedias, right?
exactly. Exactly. Or like when I was in high school, it was Cutco knives, or, the people come over and cut a
Cutco
penny.
knives. Do you
Remember
ever
that?
do that? Do you ever
I
sell those?
didn't. I had friends that did that. Yeah.
You
So
know,
we had like the handful of things that like
yeah,
my mom had bought to support like local children in their pyramid scheme.
right.
It was nice. Yeah.
They're
We
ready,
were helping.
getting them ready to
Exactly.
do bigger pyramid schemes on their
Exactly. It's
list.
sort of like those white, like remember the white candy boxes, right? Like that would always show up. Like like parents would essentially, like the kids
Oh
would bring
yeah,
them home
totally.
for like sports, and then the parents would just take them to work or whatever,
I'm
right?
all about selling candy for
Yeah,
sure. The other weird
that
things
seems
is
right.
like,
Yeah, that's
like
like
$90
immediate
Boy Scout
gratification.
popcorn. Yeah,
Right.
you're like, really? This is literally just a kernel of corn that has been
Yeah.
popped, and now
Hmm.
with some chocolate on it, mind you,
Right.
or the ones that are really good that get caramel and chocolate on them.
Yes.
But that literally, it's like a $68
I know.
bucket. And
I
it's
know.
like, I
You're
know it's
like,
tough.
I know it is tough. They get a little kid to hand it to you, but
Right.
like, sort
Right.
of like, what are you
Well,
gonna
candy
do?
bar, make it
Candy
happen.
bar's
And then
easy.
like even the Girl Scout cookies, make it happen. I
It's not
mean,
really a
$5,
choice. Yeah,
no choice, priced
exactly.
reasonably. But those
Exactly. I don't even
boxes
have to
keep
tell
getting
anybody about
smaller,
this.
right? They keep getting like we're not fooled, Girl Scouts of America. We know what
Yeah.
we're doing.
We know what's happening here. We're not fools. Yeah.
You know, authentically be helpful. I think that's like the message. You sort of laying the gauntlet down, saying this is the right time for that.
It is.
Do your analysis, find out where your SWOT can line up with being helpful, and
Yeah.
then you're clear, you're good. Don't
Yeah.
worry about
I
profits.
think that's part of it. I think there's the other side of that coin, which is like that we've seen from some companies and some, particularly depending on your space, right, in your industry, like in retail or something like that, where it's really like, or like in-person delivery, things like that, where it's just the models are so different. So there is
Yeah,
another part of it about like, if we can't, right, like if we can't be helpful, or if what we do right now isn't particularly like applicable,
yeah,
then what do we do? I think it's a question that just comes down to like investment, particularly from a marketing
mm-hmm.
sort of setup, right? Like it's sort of like prepping for, once this time is over, how can we hit the pedal then, right? So
Yeah,
maybe it's okay to be quiet for a little bit, or to be helpful in the ways, right? To volunteer time, things like that. And then behind the scenes, kind of build out those things that you haven't invested in over time. Just sort of treat it like a capital, like investment sort of thing, right? Like, what are we
yeah,
going to do? That technology we never actually set up, or, the blogs we're not writing, those sorts of things. Like, how do we then like sort of queue them up? So then when we're at the starting line, or whatever we want to call it, after this phase, then how are we going to hit the pedal then?
right, right. That makes sense. I mean, it's a crazy world, crazy times. Have you heard of the
I'm
VUCA world?
not. I'm not.
I think I heard it on this presentation the other day, and it was a concept that came out of, I think, the U.S. military back in the day. I think
Mm.
first Gulf War, maybe Cold War.
Oh
They're
wow. Okay.
trying to It was Gulf War, I think, where they're trying to describe what it's like when things are going on right now, and you're in the middle of this like uncertain time. And so
Mm.
VUCA actually stands for volatility,
Mhm.
uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Oh wow. Okay.
And they're like, let's just call it what it is. This is a VUCA world. And what's interesting is the person was talking about how that's very much like what we're in now. I mean, it very much is, uncertainty, and there's
Mhm.
volatility. We don't really know when we're getting out of quarantine. My date just went longer. And so um, their point was, think about your customers and think how you could, what's the opposite of each one of these things, right? If you have volatility, how can you give them, more certainty, or not uncertainty, there's certainty, volatility, give them more vision.
Mhm.
And just what kind of responses can you have for people to each one of these things? And it was like interesting to be able to try to weave that into your
That's
marketing, or just
interesting.
be helpful. I mean, there's no trickery about it. They're upset with this sort of VUCA. I am too. So it's like, how can you give them a little more stability? Or if
Mhm.
things are complex right now, because it's like, I don't understand the coronavirus. It's like, cool. Well, let's be super simple with our messaging right now,
Sure.
and try to respond to it.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like we're sort of like plugged in a little bit more, and the clients that are
Yeah.
operating in that way is like there's usually a case, right? Like if you have something big moving and you have a lot of stuff happening and activities, and you might not be plugged into the dialogue that happens between like sales and the prospect, right? But right
Right.
now, I think that in the companies that are really focused, the companies that are kind of moving out, that dialogue is clearer. Like, so we're really dialed into that, or you have those sort of debriefs that are like, this is what we're being asked all the time, and this
Yeah.
is kind of how we're going to respond to that, right? Like, so that's a need that we can see based on what we're seeing, and let's figure out how to go from there. But I think it is a sort of it's like that thing that happens when you just have too much input. It's like sensory overload or anxiety or
Yeah.
something, right? There's just too much. So like, it just becomes a matter of like, okay, where am I trying to get, and what's the first step there? Like, what can I do? How do I just kind of start moving? Let's get that ball rolling. Let's get our like instant coffee into our systems and get
Yeah.
rolling. And then we'll see you on the other side, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Out of
Mm.
the get go. It just has to be something
Yeah.
making it happen.
Yeah. It's a fundamentals game, right? At this
Yeah.
point, like, right. It's like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
lightness of like, okay, well, what can we kind of get out there? Like, does the service sheet, do we need to take like 2 weeks to make a service sheet that's perfect? And that kind of
That's a good
thing.
point.
right? Or do we just need to kind of get something out there, like, and then we can fix it as we go, you know, like it's probably good enough if we do it in house. Like it's all those things where you kind of adjust the timelines to say like, what is our goal here? Is it to get out there, or is it to be perfect? And the perfect thing is what's going to keep you in that like corner crying, kind of not being able to
Right.
move.
Do an analysis and you're
Mhm.
completely frozen in time.
Exactly.
I like that you used a metaphor when we were chatting earlier about like not making your marketing like a big ship,
Yeah.
that big cruise liners, which are all just hanging out now, I guess.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being stuck on one.
Yeah.
People can make my bed and
Yeah. Yeah.
I get some
Exactly.
good food or
Exactly. Yeah. I
as
mean,
long as it's
certain ones. Yeah. Maybe
certain
by
ones.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like a little yacht.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Talented Mr.
let's go.
Ripley
Let's
type
go rent
thing.
a
Yeah.
yacht, George. Let's do it.
I
We'll
like this plan.
expense it.
I'll stay on one side and you go on the
Yeah,
other
you
side.
you
Yeah.
get the one deck and I'll get the other one. And
That's fine. It's fine.
but you called it like like a ship. You don't want it to be this big cruise ship
Mhm.
or big tanker where you need tugs and turning that thing is like a full day
Oh, yeah.
exercise. And to your point earlier, you're saying, I mean, you don't need to turn on a dime, but if you're gonna, by the time your response is ready for COVID, it's over,
Yeah.
and we're on to the next thing.
Yeah, I was working in house maybe like I don't know when that was, probably 5 or 6 years ago in another company, and we were sort of checking out different pay-per-click sort of
Yeah.
outsourced people,
Okay.
and the one had an analogy. I'll give them credit for it. Sear agency in Philly, but they had this analogy about um, thinking about pay-per-click as the sniper, and then you think of organic traffic as the tank. And it's like you're sending out the sniper pay-per-click for a recon. They're out there, they're easily deployable, you get them out
Yeah.
there as one, and then they're sending back information to SEO people, to organic, to tell you what you need to make about content and all that kind of stuff, because that stuff's just going to take time to get there. But then once
Yeah.
you get that there, then you can redeploy the pay-per-click or the sniper somewhere else. And that type of thinking is the, if you want to call it a tank or a big ship or whatever,
Mhm.
it's that sort of thing. Like, what do we just need to get out there to get some information to be able to make a better decision? Like right now, our gut's probably good enough. Like the conversations we're having with prospects, that'll give us some more information. Let's get
Yeah.
out there and see if we can get any information about whether or not that is accurate or true.
So true. And you know what? Won't argue with you on a new metaphor with tanks and snipers. I mean, this is the hardcore marketing show here, people.
Yeah,
Let's do this. Let's do this.
exactly.
Put
But I
on our
think it's that
marketing
thing.
face paint.
It's that thing. I mean, I have so many analogies like that. I do that all the time. But it's like it is that thing. If you're really concentrating on turning that entire machine or that big, big, big entity towards something, it's just going to take too long. Like you're just
Yeah.
not going to really get there, and then you're going to be worried about too many things that are probably unnecessary to be able to make that turn right now. It's like, what is the least amount of things that we need to get out there? Like that MVP, most valuable product, like minimum viable product, right? Like what can we get out there right
Yeah.
now?
Talk about the MVP concept because I've definitely heard that, but I'm not sure if everyone else has in terms of.
Yeah. So you hear it a lot in agile sort of setup. So you see it in like software development a lot, product sort of things like that, where essentially like what's the least, if you think about it like an app or something, right? Like what's the primary feature that this app needs to do? Like what's
Yeah.
the first thing, right? So we're just going to get out there and we're going to put that thing out. So that first thing is the MVP. So then at that point, then you're working with the users to identify and to sort your sort of features list at that point. So it's
Got
just
it.
it's a question of like, because what you can do is if you're kind of working through that, this is 100% of the app, like you're kind of biased by what you're doing, like internal teams, like you don't have any data, you don't have any
Yeah.
customer research, those sorts of things. So it's all about sort of like focusing it again. It's like, what does this need to do at the bare minimum? And then let's get it out there and see how it performs. And then let's get feedback on what the next thing should be. And that's
Such
a
a
very, yeah, you're
yeah.
just using somebody else. You're using the user base
Yeah.
to sort your like features list.
Such a great tie into marketing then. I mean, we
Yeah.
need a marketing MVP, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's like what are where your snipers at and what are the small things you can do to zero in on the customers and make steps forward and then bring in the tanks
Right.
later. Yeah.
Exactly. But it is that thing. It's that nimble sort of like, how do we get out there? How do we make that turn? And, we don't need to turn the whole thing, but what can we get out there that kind of informs the way in which we need to turn that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's kind of get out there first and get some information to be able to make that turn, which is kind of what we're doing for some of the clients where, you have like a new setup, like a new reporting stack that's sort of bare minimum. I mean, we're working, like in one case for a client, I'm kind of moving from like a complex like Tableau setup to sort of
Yeah.
just basic Excel, right? Just to sort of get to some sort of dashboard. Like this is kind of how we're seeing it work right now. And then you're adjusting those timetables, right? Like when we might have been doing like a T12, like trailing, or we might have been looking over the last year about like lead flows and those sorts of things, what's driving what, like we're kind of tightening that timeline up. So it's like, okay, well, we're kind of working with like, there's the pre-times and then there's the current times, right? So you're sort of in that space. Like there's a 2-month window now where you're kind of like, this is kind of what we're seeing. Let's be aware and know what happened before, right? But let's
Yeah.
not like keep the bar there if it's not realistic, right? So then we're sort of adjusting. Okay, maybe like we have that sort of like, this is what we're seeing. We're kind of back to a thing like, how do we get slightly above that? Let's set the bar just slightly above there. So we're trying to grow it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're back to. It's kind of interesting.
Huh. You know, it's a good point, because I think about, not all companies are, as soon as this thing hit, they're like instantly shut down. Like restaurants,
Oh yeah.
they were like early in, but for, companies like Cheshire Impact and others, it's more lagging. It's B2C, B2B usually, all remote anyways.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit longer. And so I know for us, our first real coronavirus month was like April,
Yeah.
so at least now we can look back on April and be like, okay, how did we do? We thought we'd do this. We're actually here. We thought we'd, collect this much. This is how much we actually collected. And so now we can sort of rejigger May. We don't, to your point, we don't have like 9 months of trailing data here, or even looking at last May means nothing. Right.
It means nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was way different, right? Like we weren't
Yeah.
trapped in our houses
I'll take
and
last May,
everything was,
honestly.
yeah, it was a good May. I don't even remember it, but I'm sure it was great. Like
I'm
it was,
sure it was
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah. So
man.
yeah, I mean, it is that thing. Like, so what are we going to do? And I think that's like where the projection thing, that myth in the beginning kind of comes from. It's like that projection is like, what are you holding dear there? Like, what should we actually measure to be able to make like some sort of impact at this time? Let's not like look at this whole reporting deck that was based on everything being sort of perfect and ideal and we had months to figure this thing out, versus like, let's kind of get back to like, what are the minimums? Like, what do we need to look at to drive some sort of impact?
Right. Yeah. I'm back to not just the basics. What do they call it? Fundamentals, right?
Fundamentals. Yeah.
Like it's like a football. Back to the fundamentals, guys.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
go.
It's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just that thing. It's like, I don't know, when I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time on a basketball court, just like, doing the free throws, right? Like you're just sort of there. Those are the things that count. They're freebies. Like, it's that
That's a
thing.
really good point.
Yeah.
It's like, so, what are those things for our jobs now? I was thinking about, what are those things where you can get it in? Yeah, 3-pointers are good if you, but like,
let's get them points. Let's
get them in there. Get some points on the board.
Yeah, exactly right.
Even if it's a couple, hey, got a couple small deals closing. Great, keep closing them. Keep doing it.
Keep the like energy up, like get those things going, right? That's like the morale, like everything like that. Those are the things that you sort of need to be able to kind of roll. Like everybody's got to kind of be seeing stuff happen, like cool, like celebrate the little victories, like those sorts of things. Like you're all kind of back to that, regardless of how advanced or mature or whatever the marketing setup is. You're sort of back to it's back to the things that matter most. Like it's like the noise is kind of going away because nobody has time for the noise, or I guess the noise is, we're in our houses, so the noise is like my kid being on daycare Zoom calls or whatever, right?
Right.
It's a different setup. Yeah.
They have babysitter services now in Zoom. I don't know how that works, right? Because what's your kid gonna do? Be like, nah, you can't tell me to do anything. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it?
I don't know how that works. I mean, wouldn't you have to contain them in some way, like some sort of like, I don't know, like my kid, like a 4-year-old, like I don't know how that's gonna work. Like maybe I could put it like some sort of, like a nice cage, but like a cage.
Yeah. See, I was thinking
padded, maybe.
Shock collar, right?
Exactly. And then it's just like a tablet in the corner.
I'm gonna shock you again.
Yeah, I'm being a good parent. I'm helping. Anyway.
Oh man. Or just let them roam around in the background when you're on a Zoom.
Exactly. That's pretty much how it goes. We're just we're in that space. It's a new world, right? Everybody's just trying to.
It's a new VUCA world. Hey, what's your take on technology? Like, how do you keep your soul in all this thing? I know a lot of people, even before, quarantine and that kind of thing, they might tend to err on the side of like, this tech will save me. This tech is my vaccine. And all I need is this one piece of technology. And I know it'll fix everything.
I don't know if that's like I don't know if it's like a when I kind of came up like I'm sort of in that. I guess it's like just on the edge of the cusp of the millennials, right? So it's like that thing
Me
where
too.
like, yeah, where you have the like you kind of grew up with technology, like with Commodore 64s in somebody's house, and you played like the Snake Game or Oregon
Yeah,
Trail, and then you're like all the way up. Like, so I still had to look up things in card catalogs versus
totally.
like, right? And then
Yeah.
you go to the stacks and kind of use dimes or whatever to like copy pages from some random
Oh, good call.
research
Yeah,
paper, those
yeah.
sorts of things. Yeah. So to me, like technology sort of seems like it's a tool, right? It's like a thing where it makes something easier. It allows you to do something, but it's never the answer. It's sort of the answer is more in the why are we getting that tool, or like what are we trying to accomplish and how will that tool help us. So I think there's a lot of stuff where you can kind of get like sold, and it happens a lot in marketing. From usually see it in like marketing automation platforms or things like that, where people get sold on the idea without the
Mhm.
in-house ability to take advantage of that idea. Or they just sort of bought this thing like, yeah, this will fix it, and then they sort of have this really expensive thing that they don't really know how to operate, or they don't know
Yeah.
like why they even bought it, besides they got sold on some sort of setup where everything is automated, right? But then you have to make the
Yeah.
automation. It's going to take forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Now, this is like my life quest is
Yeah.
just is solving this problem because I had a chance to use these tools, but like, I loved your quote here was like technology is a tool, but it's not the answer. The answer
Exactly.
is the why and the how. And
Yeah.
yeah, I had a chance to do it and experience it working and want other people to experience that too. But you're right. And it's not necessarily the tool's fault, but man, I guess they talk a lot about the yeah, I guess behind the scenes, there's a sort of military industrial complex. Well, there's a
Yeah.
software industrial complex too,
Huge.
which is
Yeah.
like all about the tech, get the tech, buy, buy, buy. All their marketing supports it. And the loudest marketing is the one that's backed by a tool.
Yeah.
So it's loud, it's out there. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember I did buyer personas wrong for 10 years because HubSpot may or may not have, told me the wrong way for a while. And so it's
Sure.
like, uh, what do you do? So
Yeah.
you have all these outside influences.
Yep. And then I came up in that HubSpot way. I mean, I was sort of in a content seat. I was doing a lot of creative writing, and then I
Yeah.
got a job with a funny title. It was inbound content architect was the title.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, but they were essentially moving everything into HubSpot. They'd bought HubSpot company at
Okay.
that time, and they wanted to kind of use it. But I mean, it's fundamentally came down to like, you have to build all the things first before
Yeah.
you can even automate the stuff. So you're sort of
Right.
in this space like, well, we need blogs and we need web pages and we need, ebooks or whatever. And you still have to make all those things. And then you have to hook them together, and then you have to
Yeah.
measure them, and then you have to do, so
Right.
it's not like an instant thing. And then you're always hitting the wall, right? Like it's always that grass is greener. Like if we had another feature, if we paid for this, and those big platforms are really good at that, like sort of
Yeah.
setting you up and saying, what you need predictive lead scoring or something, right? And you're like,
Right.
that sounds like
TM.
easier than what I'm doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. And how much is that? It's a lot. Okay. And then you're going to figure it out, DIY it anyway. Right. Until
Like
like you
we
kind
need
of,
that.
that sounds great. That'll fix it. And then there's always that, like the realists in the corner that kind of run the thing that are
Yeah.
like, we don't need that. We just need to focus. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah,
So like
it's
we'll
not
be
that.
migrating for the next 3 months.
It's that thing. It's like as a homeowner and, spouse, like
Yeah.
it's the royal we, like I'm going to have to, like, well, you're going to buy it. Then I'm gonna have to build that thing, and is that
It's
the thing
true.
that's going to solve it? Yeah.
It's true. I bought a new shed. Oh, great. Yeah, it's
That's
in
great.
pieces in the backyard. I gotta
We,
go build that. All right,
we
thanks.
should, we should get new curtains or a new bookshelf. Yeah.
Right.
We'll do it.
One of those IKEA boxes that just has like 99
Exactly.
pieces.
Exactly.
Worst thing for me was a kid's playground because
Oh
it
no.
literally thousands of probably pieces and trying to be organized with this thing. But I actually, for fun, I hit the stopwatch on my phone at
Oh
the beginning of
no.
the process. It was something
Mhm.
like 8+ hours.
That sounds right. And then
Yeah.
I'm sure like you had kids and your wife and everybody just kind of asking you if is it ready yet?
Yeah. You're
We're
like,
hungry. Like we
yeah.
have things, right? I broke this thing while you were working on that thing, like all of that.
Yeah. She
Yeah.
helped me for a while, but then it's like making dinner and then it's dark. I'm outside
Exactly.
trying to finish this thing
I can do it.
and
I can
bugs are
get there.
eating me. And it's just like,
Exactly.
what is
This is
going on?
doable. I can get this.
I
I
got
always
this.
joke. I always joke I'm in a perpetual state of learning what my dad was mad about. And it's
Yeah.
just this kind of thing, that grumbling that you do from like when you have to go back to Home Depot or something, it's like, oh, that's what he was mad about, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
yeah,
You got the wrong whatever.
exactly. When you're out in the shed, like, what are you doing? I don't know. I'm just sitting in the shed because I just need this. This is
Right.
what I
Yeah. Sometimes you just need a little quiet time, like
exactly.
getting a
It's
walk
funny.
and, it's cool to do a walk with a podcast. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone.
Hello.
But also get some quiet time in too,
Yeah.
just to be able to have some thoughts other than George's thoughts and my thoughts. But
Yeah.
yeah, people need get your learning, but
Yeah.
for sure, still get your learning. Your brain's going to get super weak if you don't, but also give yourself some time to analyze and
Yeah.
think about what your thinking is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I guess my next question for you is around the future, el futura.
Okay.
That probably wasn't the right word. But
Close enough.
yeah,
I
tell
got
me
it.
about around what's around the corner. Is there anything you're excited about or anything we should keep on the lookout for?
Yeah, things I'm excited about are just more. I think we've been riding that wave. I think like one of the things that was interesting about something like HubSpot or Pardot early on was that I think it's like the learning thing. Like, so if you're in the sort of marketing tactical seat early on, like, maybe 10 years ago, you had multiple tabs open and you're kind of trying to figure out like how to reconcile this number against that number. And we see
Yep.
a person. And so as those things kind of get cleaner and cleaner and everything's kind of coming into like data's being like, you're able to see data like from different sources in one space. Like, it's for me, like that type of analytics stack is the most interesting thing. Like, how do we get to like an actual insight with all this information? And as that kind of gets more and more refined, that's like the most interesting thing to me for sure, because I don't know, for example, like there are certain ones where you have like, you're running Google Analytics or something, and then they might have an automation platform or something, right? Those numbers are always just a little bit different, or like how you're tracking conversions and all that stuff, and emails going out for this one, and then this thing's coming out through this thing. And, so when you see things in a space like a Tableau or something like that, those sorts of visualizations, like the aggregation of that data is like just super interesting. I don't know if I think that's just one of those things like where from a content perspective, it's like a cross to bear. Like there's a certain point in time as a marketer where the job became measurement too.
Yeah.
Like it used
Right.
to be like the metrics were always like there was like where it was like impressions and things like that,
Yeah.
right? Like impressions and like views and all those sorts of things. And then it was like somebody came up and was like, well, now this allows you to see like, conversions or
Right.
revenue or something like that. And as you're sort of connecting all that stuff, it's super interesting to see. I'm interested in a point in time where it's like just it's a little bit easier, right? Like you're still kind of reconciling all that data. You still need like real specialists to do it, because it's like it's development, right? It's like a certain amount of it is just connecting these sort of streams and making sense of them.
Right. Right. It's a good point, because I think a lot of times we talk about how good it is that we've added measurement into marketing, because at least we can defend ourselves a little bit and
Sure.
get a little more analytical. But I think you can easily lose sight of the craft,
Certainly.
and what we got into it in the first place, maybe to be creative. So,
Mhm.
I mean, for some people, I think I have a little bit of that where I kind of like a little bit of each side. I like a little bit of the analytical, I like a little bit of the creative.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits in marketing, but by all means, if people just want to be creative or just want to be analytical to
Yeah.
like find their sweet spot.
Yeah, I think it's that thing. There's this hazy math that happens even in a projection, right? Like there is
Yeah.
a certain like X to it, right? There's a certain like variable in there that's like, I don't know if you can sort out, right? There's like it's across the board, right? So there's a number, like, let's say if we write 5 blogs a month, what will that do, right? Like there's a certain
Yeah.
weird threshold, like where like that you get that critical mass that like something happens and there's that like sort of uptick, right?
Right.
I guess it's, this
Yeah.
one.
Up into the
Right.
whichever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
So, so yeah, it's that sort of thing. And then, so that's one part, but there is sort of like a thing about like, if it's prettier, if it's cleaner, if there's
Mhm.
a easier way to say it, or those sorts of things that do add up over time. Like I've always been sort of a detailsy person. So I kind of
Yeah.
focus on those little things, right? Like I'm a very, over the course of time, just like focus on, making sure that like thing is marked up just right. Or like I'm one of those guys that gets in the HTML and like takes out non-breaking spaces because I'm just like, why not? I'm already here, you know?
Nah.
You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing, like where
Right.
those little things do add up over time. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's like a combination for me of like creativity and then sort of refining that creativity in a way that's like connects with the audience. It's the whole thing.
Yeah. Tell me about storytelling, because I know one of your jams in my glorious introduction of you, we talked about
Yeah.
the writing, and I know we'll get into you in a little bit, but just, what's your top recommendations on writing and storytelling inside of marketing and the best way to approach it?
Well, I think it's all about, I think it is thinking about it like storytelling is a good starting point.
Yeah.
So I think I always kind of go back to like two things when I'm talking about like how to communicate better, how to tell stories. There's the 5-paragraph essay example. So I always think that that's still applicable because it kind of keeps you constrained. I don't know if you know, like, so anyway, I went to,
Vaguely remember it.
yeah, I went
Are there
to,
certain things for each paragraph?
yeah. It comes from a guy named Montaigne. It was basically a French
What's his
lawyer,
name?
Montaigne.
Montaigne.
Yeah,
Sweet.
I believe. And he was a lawyer and he wanted to write. And the reason it's called essay is like in French, essayer means to try. So it's essentially like he's trying to make a point, and that is the structure that like a lawyer
Mind
would
blown
take.
gif right now.
Yeah,
Just like,
yeah. So that would take, that's like a lawyer trying to make an argument, right? So 5-paragraph essay always starts with like your point, it's your thesis, right? So what am I trying to prove or say? And then you have sub points. So 1 point, a subtopic per paragraph after that, and then you have the conclusion. So it's essentially like the example I was used when I was in grad school and teaching students would be like dogs are better than cats, right? So you'd have that thing at the top, and then it would be like, well, dogs look better in sunglasses, like that would be point 1. Dogs, wag their tails, and then 3 might be, I don't know, dog treats are delicious or something. I don't
and
know.
dogs
Whatever
aren't
it is.
assholes.
Right. Exactly. They're assholes. That's it. There's 4 there. Okay. So that's fine. We'll do. And then it's like, so you're essentially saying, this like subtopics will add up to make that thesis, right? So you're almost saying like 1 + 2 + 3 equals thesis.
Yeah.
And then your conclusion is like, see, obviously that is true. Like that's kind of the thing. So you're always kind of like in that space of like and then from a sort of cognition comprehension standpoint, like people can pretty much only keep 3 things in their head at once. So you
Yeah.
sort of have the point and then you kind of go back. It's like if I would just coach anybody to go out and to do a speech or something like that, it's always like you concentrate on what are the 3 things I'm staying here. Like I would almost do that 5-paragraph essay. We're talking about this. These are the sub points for this. And we're just going to stay in these things. You kind of bring it back to those things just so we're always on point. Everything relates. We're tight there. You're not going too far off the map. You're still making one primary point.
Right.
So that'll be the first thing. And then the second thing is just like making it compelling. So I think part of the persona thing is about understanding who you're talking to and just really kind of getting a sense for who that person is. And then thinking about how you can relate that point to that person. Like what is the easiest, most compelling way to create that connection? So I always kind of think about those things as like simplicity and I always kind of think about it like it being in a bar almost, right? So it's like when you're sitting with somebody at a bar and they say, what do you do? Like there's two ways to go about it, right? There's I'm going to tell you this thing that you're not going to get, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm going to give
True.
you the jargon, or I'm going to tell you the easiest connection to that point, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, as a marketing sort of copywriter, somebody that's been in the messaging seat, like you feel it when you go in like a happy hour and then somebody like the waitress goes like, oh, where do you guys work? And then everybody turns to the marketing person and like, what do we say we do? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then that
Right.
person decides one of those 2 things. It's like, oh, I'm going to tell you the boilerplate, right? And then you're going to ask why, and then we have to keep going. Or I'm going to tell you that like real thing about what we actually do here, right? Like, and that I think though knowing and understanding those two things is very important if you're trying to connect that point. Like, how do I convey it to that person in a way that they can
Yeah.
understand it?
It's funny you brought up that situation, because I feel like that must be a universal thing we've all been through,
Oh
where
yeah.
you're in a group and someone's like, what do you do? And now that I own a company, and if I'm with someone on my team, sometimes I'll look at someone on my team to be like, go ahead.
Yeah, what did
I
we
want to
say?
hear.
Exactly.
I could say it, and I'll say it exactly how I want to say it, but I'd like to hear you said.
Exactly. We do that a lot when you do like onboardings too. So it's like you're in the
Yeah.
sort of you're in the leadership room, you're at the table, conference room or whatever, not now, virtual conference room, I guess now, but
Right.
it's that like, what is the definition of what we do here? And I mean, it's very common that it's not like everybody knows that script, right? It's just a common thing that people kind of say it however they need to say it. A sales guy might need to say it slightly different than the CEO, who might say it slightly different than the COO or the finance person, or et cetera. But you can see that there's like shades of difference in the way that that person and who they're talking to, how they did, and what their role is that kind of impact the way that they convey that message.
This is like really kind of cool. You got me all excited about this concept because in those experiences, the question is, do you explain it the way you would want the CEO to say it,
Mm-hmm.
or do you twist it, or do you sort of convert it to what you know about that person already?
Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
sometimes our marketing, we just sort of we do the company line. Now, if the company line has been tweaked to be able to really genuinely speak to that person, then I would expect you to say that. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's a little dry and corporate and you want to connect it to the person, you know that their aunt works in marketing, then by all means change it around.
Yeah. I don't think anybody is ever, I think there's like, so thinking about like how to tell a story, nobody ever complains about something being too concise or clear. Right. So like no, ever. So I think some of those things are held. It's like, I can remember early on, I used to have a boss that would sort of consider good content or a good marketing piece to have, like, I remember him actually saying thud factor. So like you would like throw it on the table and it would like make a thud. That's it's very like educational. That would be sort of like if you're in if you've been in college too long or grad school, that people write these like just aggressively boring
Yeah.
research things,
Yeah.
like that's the
But he
job, is to
wanted
write
that.
boring things.
He
Yeah, he
he would
wanted that.
ask you for thud fact.
Yeah.
Did he call it that? He like,
Yeah. He said thud factor
hey George,
multiple
no thud
times.
factor on this one. Get
This one's just
back to me with
not
12
heavy
more
enough.
pages.
It's just an arbitrary thing, right? Like I think there was a point in time, and when I was probably in grad school doing creative writing, that
Yeah.
like I just sort of got rid of those things. And I still believe that's true. Like when somebody says like, how long should a blog be? It's like, don't write to word count, please. Like that's just the worst thing ever, because like, if
Yeah.
you can do it in 500 words, do it in 500 words. Like, you know what I mean? There's no sense in writing 1200 words if you can
True.
say it in 500. Like, I don't want to read 700 extra words.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just why. Yeah. So I think that's the thing. It's about being aware of like, what does it take to convey that point, and what are the main points I'm trying to make, and what's the most compelling way to string them together for the person I'm talking to at the moment.
It's interesting though, because with blog posts, I feel like I've experienced the lack of the thud factor. I keep wanting to say
Yeah.
fud factor, but
It's
thud
fine. Either one.
factor.
I think they're both the same. I think
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Because I have seen some blog posts that they're like, you ordered soup and you got a salad. Like it's super healthy and light, but not really anything in there. Nothing substance.
Yeah.
Not real substance in there. That's probably not the length that's the problem in that case. It's just the content itself.
Yeah, I think there's the other side of that too. And that's one of the other things about like measurement and SEO and things like that, where it turns into like, who are you writing that thing for? So
Right.
some of it is like, we're writing it for a human being to process this information and to like maybe understand what we're talking about and maybe get some
Yeah.
value out of it. Or I'm writing this for a search engine. So it needs to be 1,500 words and it needs
Hate
to
those
be like
people.
peppered with like keywords, right? So I mean, there's probably some in between, right? That you can kind of get there. Like, I mean, there's that sort of like, we wrote it for human beings, and then now let's kind of just do a keyword comb just to make sure we're not
Right.
just like, it's not just like, we can actually get something out of this. So there is like some sort of, there's reality and practical sort of thing there, like a practical sort of application there. But yeah, I think it just comes down to like, why would you just be obtuse and long-winded for the sake of it, right? Like,
Sure.
it just doesn't make
Maybe
any
a search
sense.
engine would prefer that, but my situation earlier.
Search engine will not buy anything from you. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. Like,
Right.
you know what I
For
mean? Like,
sure.
so.
You're right. I may have stumbled on a blog that was written for a search engine instead
Yeah.
of a human. And
Yeah.
I was like, I hated it. It didn't answer
Exactly.
anything for me. It
Helps
maybe had all the
nothing.
right words. It didn't say
Yeah.
a single. single freaking thing that I could
Exactly.
take
You
away from.
got me. You got me. I looked at this thing and now I have to go still find the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like I still have to figure out in a way that kind of dials in. Like I always kind of think of content and good writing and good anything is like good teaching. So it's like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's like you remember those people that sort of like over the course of your career life, you know, being a kid, whatever, that sort of connected with you. Like you sort of they illuminated it in such a way that it sort of went like, oh, that like really that really hit home, like that
Yeah.
turned a light bulb on or something like that. And that's the kind of thing that I try to strive for when we're working through content and things like that. Like how do we
Right.
illuminate something? Like how do we make this compelling in such a way? And not everything's super compelling, but you can still add like personality to things. You
Yeah.
know, like if you're working with like an accounting firm or something like that, right? Like, and they're generating content, like it's not a given that like an accountant is going to come up with some just like really juicy content, right? You might just
That's
have to
tough.
talk about
Yeah.
some boring stuff, but like, you know, you can make it sound like a human being. Like you can make it seem like this isn't like a, you know, a sub entity, a drone within this like broader boring organization, right? Like you can
Right.
kind of create some shades of like personality and difference, and that difference kind of adds up as like somebody's like shopping the field, right? So if you're
Yeah.
looking at different accounting firms, like the way that you convey yourself and that your people convey themselves and those sorts of polish and those little details over time kind of add up, and that's the differentiation, distinguishing sort of characteristics that if you're dialed in on that, who that person is that you're trying to get and who you can serve the best, um, it should work. Like, you know, I think
Yeah.
those are sort of fundamental things.
Do you talk to customers a lot? Do you have any magic for I mean, getting into their minds and reading their souls? Like any sort of Vulcan mind meld type
Mm,
activities? Any questions that you always ask them?
I always kind of, I don't know. I think the easiest thing to do is to get them started. So like you just get them started about what they're talking about. And then I think there's a little bit of, it's as fast as you can relate to a person. And I don't know if it's something that I can sort of create any sort of like sort of quick steps to get there, but
Mm-hmm.
it is, I would equate it to like, to a little bit of like bar connecting with somebody, networking sort of thing, right? It's like the speed at which you're able to make a connection so that you can kind of break down that like artificial like sort of wall that's always there
Yeah.
whenever you start, right? Like we're, you know, it's that, I think the language always starts with something like we're the premier blah 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 blah, right? Like, and then you're
Sure.
kind of like, okay, let's get to the, you know, so you kind of have to try to get to that faster, and then the faster you can get there and the more you can connect with somebody, the more they can trust you, I think, to tell you the truth about this thing and how we're trying to move it. Like, so I think that's always been the thing. In-house, it was always like harder because you were sort of in this space where you're kind of in this like you're in the hierarchy, and then you're always
Yeah.
kind of like there's like that internal politicking that happens that you kind of have to, like I always just joked like my my career at a certain point was just like making PowerPoints to justify like a thing that you hired me to do. You know what I mean? Like that
Right.
was kind of it. Um,
And we're not even doing it yet. We're just talking about
Exactly.
it.
We're just
Yeah.
still talking about it. Like we're just, you know, this is in my title, but we just won't, you won't just let me do it. I mean, I have time. I
That's
made a
tough, man.
PowerPoint.
Tough.
Yeah. So it's that kind of setup. And then when you're in sort of an outsourced like agency consulting role, it's a lot easier because you're kind of plugged into that C-suite right away. And that's
Yeah.
the role that you're in. So that's been a lot like more refreshing. And it's really
Hmm.
interesting to just see, like we work in a middle market, like B2B servicey space typically. Like, I
Sure.
mean, we have some other clients, but that sort of setup is very interesting because it's just like an endless sort of like supply, not supply, but there's just like an endless amount of companies that are out there that are specialized in some particular thing and have carved out like a really big niche. And
Yeah.
it's just bizarre to sort of like to talk to people that have sort of built their business up in this very specific way for the
Yeah.
specific audience. You know, it's
Yeah.
just always endless because you're always like, if you get a new company or a new prospect in, you're like, wow, like you're at $50 million doing that. Like I never even heard of that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's that
Yeah.
kind of
You're
thing.
like,
Yeah.
what?
That's crazy. I get it. Like that's crazy, but I didn't think that that's the case. You know, like I didn't think that could possibly exist, you know, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. The whole, niche or niche, depending on
Mhm.
where you're from.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you call it?
I
Niche?
say niche.
Niche.
I might have said niche a while ago, but
Do you have an official ruling on that? Like,
I don't,
is there a right way to say that?
know. I think it's a personal preference there. it's just like you can, it's a judgy word. I would
Tomato,
sort of say,
tomato. Yeah.
yeah, if somebody said niche, I'd be like, all right, that kind of person.
So if they say niche, you're like, okay, you're trying to get
Right.
old school French going on here.
Exactly. It's like, it's one of those things. It's like bruschetta, I think, is like a good example of that, right? Like, how are they going to say that when that comes up? Because some people are like, bruschetta or whatever,
Oh
right?
no,
And I'm
no,
like, come on
that's over
now.
the top. They just
Yeah,
close the
exactly.
door in their face at
Whatever.
that
Yeah,
point.
exactly. Come on. Let's just get,
Uh,
again, who are we talking to, right? Like, let's just get that bruschetta ordered. Like, you know what I mean?
right? You know, it's like you're in any of these any sort of restaurant with a real authentic people there cooking it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Italian restaurant. And you're like, oh, how you doing today? Oh, you like the bruschetta or the ravioli. You're
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
okay, none of the other words you just said had an accent.
There's like a very like Giada De Laurentiis sort of thing about it, right? Like when you watch her shows and she kind of throws that in. It's like, we're gonna pump ricotta or something like that. And you're like,
Right.
come on. It's like
Like
you were
all
just, yeah, you were
your
New
other words
Jersey
didn't
up
sound
until
like
that
that.
point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's weird. You're like, what are you
It is
doing?
funny. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, hey, who are you? Like, how did
Oh,
you got all this experience, the writing? Can you
mhm.
take us back in time to like little George? What was it like
Little
growing up
George.
as you and all that?
Oh man, that's I'll go. It was fun. I grew up in Salem County, New Jersey. It's like South Jersey. It's
Oh,
sort of over the
Jersey. Okay. Well,
yeah, over the Commodore Barry Bridge. So we're Philadelphia more than New York, basically.
so you're
Um,
home now.
I am, yeah. So I'm sort of like, no, I'm an hour or so away
Hour or
from where
so.
I grew up.
Okay. But that's
Yeah.
cool. You
So.
kind of come full circle.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's it used to be like down there you'd say like, oh, Bruce Willis is from here, he's from like Pennsville or Penns Grove, one of them, and then you'd say a couple people like that, and now I use like Mike Trout, so he's in Millville, and that was probably 15 minutes away from there. So
Huh.
sticks like very farm country kind of setup, and
Oh,
I
really?
was like, yeah,
So
so
Jersey has sticks. I'm just thinking of
it's
Newark every
just
time I
nothing
think of
down there.
Jersey.
My wife always makes fun of me because she grew up in Philly, and she's like, this is the country, dude. Like, this is not, this isn't the burbs. Like, this is the
Right.
country. So yeah, it gets like super dark and quiet there at night, like a kind of thing. Like, it's just too quiet anyway.
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I grew up there. Still like, I think my high school had 158 kids when we graduated, like in that
wow. Yeah.
graduating class. So I knew everybody, and it was sort of like one of those. It's kind of cool school though, in terms of like it was small enough and you can kind of bounce around, try all the clubs, activities, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, my mom is a Filipino like nurse, and so I was on the track for engineering. I used to do, yeah, it's on that track. So
Was that her suggestion?
yeah, that was her strong suggestion. So yeah, I used to do these like little programs. I was one of those kids that took like SATs early on, and we would go to like colleges and visit them, and whatever.
You a smart kid?
It was, yeah. I was a good test taker, though. I
Good
think I was
test
sort
taker.
of good. I'm broad. I have like a broad comprehension in general, so I kind of,
Got
so I
it.
was a good test taker. Kind of could do lots of things. So anyway, I was actually at one point even trying to get into Naval Academy, but I have like things, so that was like a free college play. I'm not gonna lie about that. And then
Right?
I
Totally.
didn't really care about it enough. Like, I think I was on that like engineering track, and then I got accepted at a couple colleges. Went to Penn State. I was accepted for mechanical engineering. And sometime around, what do they call it? Orientation. I sort of had this breakdown. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to be an engineer. I want to be an English teacher. And
But
my
like, tell me
mom,
about that. Did part of you want to be an engineer ever, or was it just literally? Because I've
I could
experienced that
do it.
too, where
So
your
it's one of those
parents.
things,
Yeah.
like I could do it, but I didn't love it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like sitting down and doing equations or math, that was like the work that I wanted to do the least, so like, what, I'm going to
Right.
build a career on this thing I don't like out of all the things I was doing. I think it came back to, I had a class senior year that was called a speech and media. And they had this grant from the state that was, they basically had like a media lab, like AV setup, where you had like
Yeah.
all these, like sort of like at that point, dating myself, but they had the sort of colorful IMAX and like the big
Yeah.
power things. Yeah. So,
Back
and
when
then we
computers
had,
were cool.
exactly, Final Cut and all that sorts of things. And we would run the morning announcements. So we had groups, there was like 6 groups or something you'd rotate through. And part of the exercise was you did like the morning announcements, sports, what's for lunch, all those sorts of things. And then you'd have like these things they call special segments. So they were like 4-minute pre-taped things that you
Huh.
could create little stories in or whatever. And then there was like something like a feature, which was like a 30-second something funny, something. And we sort of like kind of run the boards, and you would like say, here's our kind of featured segment or special segment or whatever.
Was it like a
And
news show? Did you have like
kind
two
of
anchors and?
two anchors and a little sports desk, and you had
No
this little
kidding.
like these little buttons that you would like switch the feed. So like a
Yeah.
little like a button, you go click like that, and then the desk was right next to the other
Now
desk,
back to you, George. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah, that's cool.
exactly. You were all in the room kind of running the stuff.
This is high school? This was high
I
school?
was in high school, yeah. They had
Nice.
the sort of like the TVs like up in the corner of the room, and everybody would watch them in the morning, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So it'd run on that closed circuit. And yeah, and we did that. And it was like we really got into the Final Cut editing story part of it. So we made little funny things. Like, remember one was we pretended like we were a behind the music sort of band that had gone through decades. So we got to dress up and
Sure.
kind of do little things and pretend and do these like little, remember setting up like gym mats behind us so they look like those backgrounds when you do those like talking head, like,
Wow, yeah.
yeah. So that sort of stuff. So we do that. And I just kind of liked being on camera. I like telling stories and stuff. So at that point I was like, maybe it's something in this like storytelling Englishy
Yeah.
thing. I always liked reading, always liked writing. So maybe I'll be an English teacher. My mom was like, no. And then we went into like PR. So it was like, okay, let's do PR. So then I shifted over and I got a degree in public relations
Do
and
you remember
advertising.
the moment? Was there like a moment, or was it gradual when you're just like, F this like engineering
It was
thing?
like at orientation. I think I was in like some sort of Chili's or something. Like I was across the table from my mom and I was just like, I don't want this. Like, I don't want this. Like there was
Yeah.
basically that kind of moment. And then, and yeah, and
Glad
they
you
were
did
supportive
though, because
about it.
like
Yeah.
you could be an engineer right now.
Oh yeah.
It'd be
I could have been. Yeah. I've been
super
miserable. Yeah.
miserable. Yeah. And
Maybe I
a
would.
really
Yeah.
shitty one too, right?
Yeah. Really
You're
bad.
like, I hate this. I'm not gonna.
Totally disengaged.
Yeah.
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 And yeah, so yeah, and it just turned into that kind of thing. And that was sort of the thing too on the other side, like we're like pushing for like, do I enlist after I don't get into the Naval Academy, things like that. It's like, I don't even want that. Like, so it was just
Right.
this sort of thing. Like it was like that sort of movement. PR was sort of this like practical application of those skills, right? The
Right.
sort of like storytelling, writing, that sort of stuff. But I ended up getting the English minor anyway. I was taking all these like advanced writing classes, and I just like those. I
Hmm.
liked sort of short story classes and modern literature and those sorts of things, and sit around and talk about stories and write them and do. I did a lot of like workshop classes where you'd
Yeah.
sort of write a short story and then you kind of like present them, and it's
I
kind of
like those
fun.
classes. Those are
Yeah,
fun.
they were fun. And then you sit up in front of the class and they shred it, that kind of thing. And you're like,
Ah,
oh, I
yeah.
don't like your opinion anyway. Like your opinion sucks, but I like your opinion. So that's a good point. Like you kind of learn that sort of
Mm.
thing.
I don't think
Yeah.
I've
And
ever
then
had someone do the shredding thing. That might be kind of an interesting experience
it
too.
was interesting. You'd have like, you'd go up like every week or something. So your story would be due like the week before the next class or something. So you'd like send it to everybody. They'd read it. And then you'd go sit up in front of the class basically, or maybe in a circle, that sort of thing, drag the desks, around in the circle. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then people would just sort of talk about like what they thought about your story or whatever. And I always kind of like that experience. That definitely prepped me a lot for the marketing role and the creation role, because it became less of, there's that interface between like where, if you're in the room by yourself writing versus like if you're getting sort of like a dialogue or there's somebody weighing in on it. I imagine it's kind of comparable to, it's a lot longer in between like the deliverable, but like it's comparable, I would say, to like stand up or something like that, right? Where you get like this reaction, like, so you're asking for that feedback or that thing is
Right.
conveyed in a way. So yeah, so I kind of did that. And then went out and did some boutique work. I was working in an agency for like 9 months, um, and then had another sort of moment where I was like, I don't like this either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did I call that one my, like, I want to dance moment. And I went back to school for creative writing at that
What
point.
happened? Tell us this. I want to dance moment.
I was like working. So at that point I was still living at home with my parents, and I was commuting into Philly every day. And that was probably each way, like an hour and a half between like a
Ugh.
drive in traffic, pure traffic. And then I would get on a train and like go in and then come back, and and I was just doing that for, I think it was like
I've
It was
done
like
that,
my
man. It's
first job.
brutal.
I know, it was
Yeah.
like my first job. I think I was making like 28 grand a year or something like that. I had like
Oh,
no money, right? Like you're just kind of going, this is what I have to do. I put on the little, the shirt and the
yep.
slacks, and I go and I do the thing, and I sit in a cubicle. Um, but I just was like not really engaged. I was a junior, I think it was junior account executive, something like that. Like one of those
Hmm.
something sort of
Oh,
title
like a
like that.
PR firm
Assistant.
kind of thing?
Yeah. Assistant account executive, I think is what it
Yeah,
was.
I
Yeah.
remember I did a PR internship. I remember the hierarchy, and you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, account, oh, okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was always kind of like somebody though that was like overly, like I would be applied in weird ways because I kind of figure stuff out. So I can
Yeah.
remember like looking at your background and like your ceiling, like I can remember at one point, like I had to wire like something, and I had to take wiring from from the one computer or something and run the speaker all the way over
Oh,
like in
wow.
the drop ceiling. Like I can remember doing
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, anyway, so I was just kind of all over the place, and then I just didn't really like it. And then I was sort of doing these things where I would figure out how to write. So I was basically buying, like I bought a little laptop for myself with whatever money I had. I would try to write during lunch breaks, but it was like impossible.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
sort of like take note, like I always have like notebooks, and I would sort of like write down little details. Like I'd go to like a cafeteria, and I just sort of look at people, like, or like one of those like sort of lunch, like in a mall or something where you kind
Yeah.
of sit around in there. And I would sort of just like steal, I called it like stealing details from people, right? Like I'd sort of like notice like, oh, that
Yeah.
the way that person's like flip flop hangs off of their foot or something like that. Or like I like the way that person's doing, like carrying their bag just so or whatever. And I would
Wow.
just sort of write those little
Yeah.
things. And I would just sort of work there, like work on that. And I look for a program that had like more of a writing focus as opposed to like a literature focus. So I moved into, I went to Rowan University in
Where's that
Glassboro.
at? Is that nearby?
It's in between. It's almost like in between where I grew up and Philadelphia. And it's like booming now. It's like a state university, but when I went, it was much smaller. They kind of did a bunch of jumps. It was basically like a teacher's college early on.
Got it.
Then it kind of got an engineering boost, like somebody there. I think that's where the name comes from. He was like an engineer, and then he kind of, donated a lot of money. And then
Yeah.
since it's become like much bigger, there's like now a medical school there and
Was
things
your
like
mom
that.
ever like, hey, they've got good engineering there? You're like, no,
It's
I'm good, Mom.
no, I'm good. I already made this choice. I'm dancing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I went in, I got a grad assistantship, and was probably like in a year and a half or something. I was working in the writing lab. I was teaching undergrads like how to write better essays, and then got out of there and I went into a nonprofit and did I was on a creative team there. It's called Destination Imagination. They do like
I know those guys. Yeah.
yeah, they do like like basically after school programming. So I was in their headquarters doing a lot of their creative writing and
Wow.
like doing all the production. So yeah, and I worked on a little creative team there. We kind of executed, did a lot of different things. I kind of that was like, I would equate it to agency like experience, a little bit like more hectic than that, but all over the map, everything from like events to, curriculum to training materials to all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and then I went out of there, did like, worked for a company called Beyond.com, turned into Next, and then jumped out and did people metrics,
The Apple Next?
NEXXT. So they were
Okay.
like a career kind of network.
Got it.
I was a community editor there. I basically was asked to build out like a content delivery sort of platform for like different skill sets. And the way
Yeah.
that worked was I'd sort of worked at Destination Imagination doing like programming for different sort of kids and skill sets.
Sure.
And then that just applied to what they were trying to do over there. And then that was a big commute one. I was living in Philly at the time and doing this like commute to King of Prussia, and it was like a
Oh,
brutal.
geez. I've
It
been
was
out there.
brutal. Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal.
Casino and everything
Yeah,
out there.
it was
Yeah.
brutal because it was just, and there's no shortcuts. It was one of those things where like Waze had just come out and everyone's like, just use Waze. You can find some shortcuts, or
It's like there's one way.
it
I mean,
doesn't matter.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're moving, but you still kind of get in the same, like it's still the same amount of time.
Right.
Like it felt good for a second. Yeah, and then my wife, and then I had met my wife somewhere in between there, and she got a job as a teacher outside of the city, and kind of moved out, and then I found a job in the city for the first time. I was living in the city for like 8 years in Philly.
You actually found one nearby as opposed to having to commute God knows where.
No, I was like commuting out of the city. So and Philly's got a weird
Oh.
city tax set up, so you're kind of paying a lot of money
Oh, geez.
to do that. And anyway, but so we moved out just kind of north of the city. Um, and yeah, and then as soon as we moved, I basically found a job like in Center City.
Oh,
So I was like,
jeez.
damn it. So
Like you
anyway, I
just left.
commuted.
You're like, I would have had a 5-minute commute just now.
Exactly. And I
Son of a
spent
gun.
about 3 or 4 years there. I think that was the inbound content architect job. And I
Yeah.
kind of changed to a marketing manager, and I kind of built up their blog at that point. So that's where I
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
learned all that and got some like industry awards for that blog and all that kind of stuff. And just proving it out. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It was kind of funny since the beginning, like when I was in that associate account executive seat to
Sure.
that point in time, my skill set was much more valuable because people like marketing sort of understood that like we need to do content. Like I was going through old things from that first job, and there's a presentation there about why content was important when I was like
Yeah.
23 years old or something. And like, I was sort of making the case as this upstart. But like it didn't
Yeah.
take, I just had to wait. It was like, you just had to wait. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was important,
Right. All of a sudden, it's super important.
Exactly.
If you were to look back on all these different things you've done, here's a hypothetical.
Yeah, that's fine.
I may or may not have a time machine in Nashua, New Hampshire. Can't use it now because of COVID, but when this thing gets done, let's say I let you borrow my time machine.
Yeah.
You go back in time and you visit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And right after you graduated with that first degree, and you can tell yourself, you give yourself advice, what kind of things would you say to yourself? What kind of things would you advise and recommend? Do this, don't do that.
I would say that it's just, part of it was just like relax. Like it's going to take time. Like I think one of those things that you do when you come out, like everybody's like hungry when they come out of college, right? Like you want to get out there. And then there's like, I think the other part was like, don't compare yourself to other people that are doing other things. Like it's not comparable. Like your friend that's in this city or working that type of job is not comparable to you. Like that you're in this space, you have this degree, you're doing these things. So to me, it was just I think like kind of relaxing and also sort of like understanding that like it would take time. I think like those sorts of things too, I've noticed, like I noticed over time too, like when you make those decisions about like, like maybe this isn't the job for me and things like that. And you get those like, I gotta get out of here kind of things or whatever, like it still takes like a year or something if you're going to pick a good one or something, right? Like you still have to sort of like, you just like calculate, just try to make the best decision you can, like kind of move in the direction that you think is better for you. And then that's that. That's what I would tell him. I don't know if he'd listen to me, but like, he was kind of a dick.
You're like, screw you, old man.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
actually, I am you.
No. Yeah, I'd say get a dog sooner than you
Get a dog.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
get a dog. God, what are you waiting for?
You have a dog now?
I do. Yeah.
What kind?
I have a mix. He's like a rescue dog. I don't know.
Oh, cool.
It's like Bill Burr's joke. He's a free dog. Yeah. So he's kind of combo. He's like looks like
he's
a
an
lab.
independent voting dog.
Exactly.
His no party affiliation.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. He was just sitting around. They said, "Do you want this one?" And I said, "That one's cool." My son was probably 6 months old when we got him. I went to like a event and we picked the one that was sleeping and kind of looked the most placid, and he's been
smart move.
He's been as advertised. He's been a very good family dog. I just wasn't trying to buy an aspirational dog. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to get in shape using this dog. Like I wasn't.
No.
I'm not going to lie to myself like that. And the dog, no way.
Dog will crush you.
Exactly.
And then tear up your couch after the run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I'm just going to be a realist here. I'm not going to wake up at 5 o'clock and run this dog. Like that's not going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
But I can't, I can certainly, stay up late watching TV if the dog wants to, hang out on the couch with me.
Exactly.
Totally got that.
Just roll over. I can pet his belly. It's good. We got a good thing. Like, here you go. Here's a treat. That's all.
What's his name?
We're all Pepper.
Pepper. Nice.
Pepper. Yeah. Good dog. Yeah.
Pepper, the good dog.
Yeah.
Hey, are you still writing?
I do occasionally. I do. One of those things.
You ever turn those little tiny cool observations into a story or a book?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I have some of my work still up on my website. It's like georgejacob.us. There's some stories and some writing there, like more personally writing. I still write for Marketry occasionally and things like that. I do a lot of the editing on that side. It takes a lot of the solitary writing time goes away when you have a kid and a wife and a family and a house and all those sorts of things. So there is a little bit of like bargaining I gotta sort out. Like, how am I gonna, especially, and then because I have a computer job, so it's just one of those things. I'm always trying to work in like, how do I do this in a way that doesn't feel like I'm just in front of a screen 24/7 trying to come up with ideas. You know
That's
what
a
I mean?
good point, man.
Yeah. So I have like a lot of like, I have a lot of paper and like a fountain pen sort of person that likes the
Yeah.
feeling of it. And I try to do
Yeah.
things like that, like make it more tactile and,
I wrote a play a
Oh
couple
yeah.
years ago. When I was deployed to Iraq,
Hmm.
for something like 6 or 7 months, it was like the high speed, low drag, like searching places, looking for bad guys,
Yeah.
really fun stuff, right? But then I had to do what everyone had to do one of those months, which is guard duty.
Okay.
Thankfully, mine was at the end, so my last month there, they're like, great, you're on guard duty, and it was like the Breakfast Club. They like put
Oh,
me with
nice.
all some of those guys never were always on guard duty because they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know about these guys, so let's put them on guard duty,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I had to do my stint with them. So here I am, like, wow, go ho, like just came off doing missions and stuff, and now I'm
Yeah.
like the guard duty Breakfast
Oh
Club,
man. Yeah. Like
detention.
major pain kind of thing, right? Like you're with the,
Yeah, yeah, major pain.
yeah.
And I remember them putting me, and we had this really fortunate. We took over this like old pleasure palace from Uday or whatnot. So
Mhm.
it had walls, it had guard towers around the periphery because it was his old. And he built a lake. He like, I like boat racing. It's the
Yeah.
desert. Let's make a lake. So he made a lake, and so we were sort of guarding this base. And I just remember being on a guard tower for, was it 8 hours, maybe, at a time, and you're just by yourself.
Yeah.
And then, man, a little bit of isolation, and like you said, like I had one of those little books
Yeah.
where it was just like, what am I gonna write? And eventually it was like, let's write a comedy play.
Yeah.
Like,
Just whatever at
yeah,
this
but to
point,
your point,
right?
no
Yeah.
interruptions, right? And even though we're
Yeah.
quarantined now, you still have, well, for in a good way, you have people
Yeah.
around you, but also you have people around you, so
Yeah, it is one of those things. It's kind of like those, and then just the responsibilities of being a dad and a parent and a
yeah,
homeowner and all that stuff just sort of adds up. Like there's those things that you just don't have. Like
yeah,
when you're, in grad school, kind of just like doing it or whatever,
sure,
like you're just kind of in the, crappy apartment or whatever. Like for me, it was like just crappy apartment, like, just typing up stuff all the time, like
yeah,
writing, reading all the books and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like that time, I just don't have it anymore. So,
right,
I kind of like always kind of talk to myself about how I need to do it. But, I don't know. I think it's like those things, like a time of life or something like that, where you're,
sure.
I'd rather kind of hang out with my kid when he's awake, that kind of stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And then you have the thing where you're like, well, I definitely could use this time now to get some dad time in, some husband time in.
Yeah.
But you also like, you got to get your own time in too.
Yeah,
Which can
exactly.
be tough,
Yep. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to
So I'm
balance
always
it all
like
out.
bargaining those things, right? Especially it's like, oh, I got to go exercise. I got to do whatever, right? It's like these
Right.
constant, like sort of things, like who am I
Right.
trying to be? That's kind of that thing. So I don't know. I mean, I still read a good amount. I still like, talking to people about stories and things like that. And I
Yeah.
do a lot of that. There might be something I can like scratch with like I don't know, maybe like a, teacher kind of thing. Like if I kind of teach at the local, local community
Yeah.
college or something like that, I might
Sure.
get that, I scratch that itch.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Yeah. Something to just do that. I mean, for me, it's like theater. And so like podcasting kind of helps scratch that itch. But yeah, you got to find a way. And I think you've turned your job into a way that helps you scratch that too.
yeah,
Can be
there's
helpful.
something about that. I think there's two pieces. It's like the one is like a filtering sort of editing. That's the one thing I'd say I learned most in grad school is like self-editing and editing more
Huh.
than the writing part. It's more about like what is not necessary here, or it's the kill
Interesting.
your darlings kind of thing. Like
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
do I just love this sentence because it took a while to write this sentence, or is it worthwhile? Does it need to stay there? So like that was a big part of my sort of learning process there. And what I do for clients is in that vein. It's like a lot about kind of cutting out the fat. Like, what do we need here?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a different one than sort of like and it kind of comes back to like destination imagination or something like that, where
Yeah.
there's two sides of that creative muscle. It's like they call it idea generation. So it's like the brain, of which brainstorming is one of the tools, right? So it's like, how do you come up with ideas, turn on that tap like that? And then there's the second part, which is basically oh man, there's like a filter. It's basically like a filtering, like what are the good ideas then,
Yeah.
right? So you don't confuse those two steps. You sort of say like, we're just going to come up with ideas, and then we're going to go back to say like, which are the good ideas.
Right.
Let's not worry about
Separated. So
stupid
it's not the
ideas.
same time. You're
It's
shooting
not the
down all the
same.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because then you sort of like always stifle the
Right.
potentially good idea. So you always set the bar, like let's come up with 50 ideas no matter what, and then you're
Right.
kind of coming up with ideas. It kind of creates that sort of space. So I concentrate like sort of in those two veins, but the writing part is like, there is a solitary sort of thing about like
Mm.
you picking you come up with the ideas and then you pick like the ordering of those ideas that
Yeah.
you just won't get if you're working in marketing for a client or something like that, right? Like you don't make those choices. Like you're making the choices for the client. So there is that little like
Right.
filter switch there that I do miss a little bit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and the
making me
customer
think
too,
about it.
right? Because if you're
Yeah,
writing for the customer, to our earlier point, I mean, you talked about earlier, you're not really writing it for you. You're writing it
yeah,
for them, and you want them to understand it.
yep,
But if you're writing for you in like a true sense, like a fiction or
yeah.
even sometimes nonfiction, but you're writing for you, you can make it sound however you want to
Mhm.
sound. It's your call, 100%.
Yeah, it's the thing when and it comes in a blog sometimes. It's what we're doing now, right? Like, so
Yeah,
part of that, part of the interest or part of the compelling force or whatever is the thing like, okay, here's the premise, and then
yeah,
how does it go into my brain and then come out? Like, is that
right,
interesting or not? There's a certain uniqueness to that, or, or a voice to that. If you have the idea, like the way you convey it versus me, like there's something interesting about those things. And yeah, the nonfiction part's just the same type of thing. Like, how do you come to that realization? How do you like, the thing that started that sort of chapter or
yeah,
part of the book, right? Like, what is the thing that drove that? Like, if I was to talk about that moment in time, I'm sitting in an Applebee's or Chili's or whatever it was with my mom, like, what was that? Like, if I
yeah.
kind of dug into that, like, yeah. So it's just a
Like,
certain
yeah. What do the seats feel like? Yeah. What's it
cushy. I
smell
think they were
like?
slippery. I feel like they had like vinyl,
Yeah.
like the sort of
Usually have that tiled table too,
hmm
or
yeah,
whatnot,
something
and
like that. I feel like it was darker. I feel like, so maybe Applebee's
yeah.
wasn't right. I feel like they were lighter. I feel
Oh,
like it
okay.
might have been like some
Applebee's.
sort of like just Chili's or like a sort of local shop, like
Should
I
probably
don't
call her
know,
up and ask her what it
Darkwood.
was.
Yeah, she probably was
Be like,
probably
Mom,
blacking
remember
it
when I
out.
broke your heart and said I wasn't going
Remember?
to be an engineer? Like,
Remember when I said I wouldn't be able to support you when you got older?
you remember that? Yeah. Where
You
were
remember
we?
that? Yeah, yeah.
She'll be like, we were in something completely different. And you're like,
hmm
oh,
Oh, that was in the minivan. I was yelling at you to recall. Like, oh no,
oh,
black that part
okay.
out.
It sounded better in a Chili's, honestly.
Exactly. I like the thing where I seemed like I came to some realization and wasn't a
Yeah.
blubbering mess. Anyway.
Well, the whole kill your darlings thing, it just reminded me of when I wrote this book on marketing automation
Mhm.
on Amazon now.
Yeah.
So uh, when I originally wrote it, it came out to something like 45,000 words. And then the publisher was like, you're contracted for 35,000 words. So here are your options. Um, make it 35,000 words, or and we're totally fine with this other option. You could just keep it at 45 and pay us 25 cents a word over.
I don't
So
make you cut
you
some
do the
words. Yeah.
math, 10,000 times 25 cents, and you're like, all right, I'll trim a few things.
It's cheaper to trim it. Yeah.
I'll trim it. And I remember getting to this one section. It was called Advanced Dynamic Content. It was all about doing some really advanced stuff with Pardot, marketing automation. And one of the things I'd written was a brief history on advanced dynamic content. It was like three paragraphs, maybe 3 or 4. And I was like, that's a really good section. And I thought, is this section worth, I did the
Necessary.
math, it was like worth $750. No.
No, it is
Delete.
not
And
my money, right? Like now
somehow
we're
we got
talking
down.
real money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got down. And at first you're like, how am I ever going to do this? And you're like, this is terrible. But then what I realized afterward was probably a gift for the reader,
Yeah.
because it really cut out anything that didn't need to go in there. If I said it twice, it got removed. Like
Yep.
we don't have time for that. We don't got
Exactly.
time for telling you the
I
core
used to
content
do that
going on.
so much so there you'd get these undergrads that would come into the writing lab and they'd ask you
Yeah.
to help like maybe they were referred by a teacher or something like that. And there would be so many times that I would just cross off the first paragraph and just be like, I don't need to be involved in you figuring out what you're writing about. You know what I mean? Here's where you
Oh,
actually know what you're
yeah.
writing about. You'd get those like, since the beginning of like recorded time, there have always been like, whatever, like marketing people or something like that. And you're like, this is dumb. We don't need this. Let's just get,
I
what's your
love it.
point? You know what I mean? Like,
Red ink
what's the
too. Was it
point?
red?
Yeah, I would use the red thing. I would always write
Boom.
something at the top and just be like, here's the rule. Like next time you come in, I don't want to see this thing again. So this is the one thing I want you to focus on this time. Like next time you bring your essay back, and then we'll worry about that. Or I would do these little like the brackets and say like this paragraph is about this, right? So that's the main point. And then I would say which one of these sentences does not belong here, and
Right.
invariably they could find it, right? But it's just they didn't have at that point too. I think like I had gone through a little bit more like structural like learning about how sentences were, like when I was a kid, even just like
Yeah.
noun, verb, objects, those sorts of things, indirect objects, weird things. But there were no words, like they didn't have the same language. So you would always use like broader
Right.
terms, you know, so this is a modifier or this is a thing or whatever. So you'd always just sort of show them like, this is the shape. This is what you're doing here. You're muddling this. This just moves down to this paragraph, that kind of thing. Anyway.
There's some expert wisdom coming off of that. We'll have to talk more. We'll have to come back on here and talk more writing. But like, I was like, maybe I'll send him a copy of my book. Maybe I won't if I get a copy back with a bunch of red on it.
It's fine. Do whichever one you want. If you
where
just
were
want
you
to hear
a
it
year
or not.
ago? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, where can people connect with you? They want to reach out, learn more, maybe get your help with some writing, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so there's two ways. I mean, my personal website's georgejacob.us. And then what I'm doing for Marketry, you can visit that too, marketry.com, marketri.com. And you can see kind of what we're doing, and probably some information there in terms of like, you know, if you look at my bio or something like that, you probably get to my LinkedIn page. And yeah. So.
Awesome. And then what about social, like LinkedIn, Twitter?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot, Twitter, not so much. I kind of do it occasionally. That's another one I sort of shelved over time. I'm like, oh man, I'm shoveling coal. I don't have time for this anymore.
Last tweet, July 10th, 2018.
Oh,
shaming you on the podcast.
God, it's just right into it. Yeah. Then
I'd follow you, but you know, they limit now how many people you can follow.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, I'm not throwing anything valuable up there right now in the moment. No.
Useless to me on Twitter. But okay, LinkedIn though.
LinkedIn, I'm there. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good place to go. And then, yeah, I mean, otherwise just reach out to me and we can chit chat. I'm happy to talk.
For sure. Yeah. People that want to connect with you, they should put a little note in there saying they heard your podcast episode. Don't be a stalker. Don't sound, even if you accidentally sound like a LinkedIn, like a cold call, just kind of add a little podcast in there so that George knows you're not one of those crazy people.
Yeah, I'll just know if the trainer reaches out to me about sales and COVID times. It'll be, I know where he's coming from.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been fun. Thanks for coming on here and chatting marketing and telling us your story and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
For sure. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I know you did because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here.
Nice.
Then share this with someone. You know, get it out. Be a thought leader to like 8 people, right? Put it out on your LinkedIn, Twitter. Yeah, LinkedIn. You may be a thought leader to 500 people, not even realize it, right? So get this content out. The conversations we were having about the sniper versus the tank and picking your MVP in marketing. There's so many good things we talked about, and the idea of explaining what you do based on who the person is and how can we leverage that in our marketing writing, like all these really good concepts. Get this information out to people so they can learn too. And George, hey, thanks again, man. We got to stay in touch. I want to check back in post COVID, see how things are going, and get you on here again.
All right, thanks a lot, Casey. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, for everyone out there listening to this Shazam, this has been a Hardcore Marketing Show episode. We will catch you all next time.